What's up? What's up? What's up, everyone? It's your boy Nick P, and welcome to another episode of Black Voices Matter. Like I said, I'm your boy Nick P, or you can call me the guy with the beard. And guess what? I got my co-host here.
Mashaka T. McKenzie. I don't have a fancy name, but I'm also Portugal LLC, and I'm also the communications director at Gammon Theological Seminary. Hopefully that you can hear something today, and I hope that you comment, like, share with everybody.
Yeah, we got the whole family in the house today. So Gammon is definitely showing out in the community, and we're here to show off one of our Gammon brothers. He is a graduate of Gammon Theological Seminary. We are here to have represent all the way from Jackson State University our brother Reverend Kevin Kosh, also known as Rev Kev. What's up, brother?
What's up? What's up? It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to, be in dialogue with you all, talking about some crucial things, having crucial conversations. Because faith matters, heritage matters, we matter, and we need to talk about it.
So I think it's dynamic. Like the people need to know how dynamic of a person you are. So you're the senior pastor at Coop Hall United Methodist. You're also the director and campus pastor at Jackson State University Wesley Foundation. You are just doing some major things. Just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
All right. So, yes, I am Reverend Kevin Kosh Jr., campus pastor at the I Love Jackson State University. I have a passion for ministry, campus ministry. I love heritage, African American heritage. I love doing the work of justice because justice is not just us and matter. To say we matter is just the minimum. And so we have to be able to have these dialogues so that we can put our faith in action in practical ways. And that is only possible when people step up to the plate and have these conversations, are advocates, and are doing the work of reconciliation, not just with ourselves to God, but ourselves to our neighbors. And if it wasn't for like local churches, if it wasn't for teachers, if it wasn't for coaches, pouring into me, showing that I am more than just a statistic, I am more than just what somebody else has said to me, I wouldn't be here doing the work. And I will never be able to pay those people back, but I promise to pay it forward. And I hope that my words and our words can inspire others to do the same.
That is that is absolutely amazing, and I think it's another thing about you that I always find inspiring is the fact that you are always using your voice to inspire others. You're always paying it forward, and so you are the prime example, in my opinion, of what it means to be someone from the school of the prophets. If you don't know, then now you know. The School of Prophets is the nickname for Gammon Theological Seminary because we produce prophetic problem solvers like our brother Rev Cab. And so we started this particular talk show to talk about not just Black lives, but also Black voices, that Black voices matter, that here at Gammon as the School of the Prophets, making prophetic problem solvers, we believe that it is the Black voice that is a resounding prophetic voice in this day and age. And so today our topic is a very important topic. We're going to give our voice. We're going to weigh in on something that is so um, divisive, if you will, for a reason that is divisive in and of itself. But we're going to be talking about why we say that Black lives matter. Um, so did any one of you want to kind of give your feedback on how maybe that problem, how that resonates with you?
Well, for me, not to just jump in there, but I actually thought in this climate of being in COVID and being at home and George Floyd, I thought more people or the majority of the world understood what Black Lives Matter or the movement, but also being at home. People have been reading other words or messages that doesn't resonate with what Black Lives Matter stand for. And so what Black Lives Matter to me or for me, and what I stand for in the movement is that we are looking for justice and equal opportunities. On my Facebook today, I asked, I said a thing, some quote of the line of, I can't believe people don't understand what Black Lives Matter mean. And I've been in dialogue with people, and people are talking personal, like, you have more privilege than I do. You are being racist because you are saying that I'm racist and all these things like that. But they're not recognized that I have a master's degree, but if a white man come right alongside me trying to get the same job, he is more likely to get the job with less education, right? And so for me, it's the systematic issues that hold us back. Then another person asked, so what are the systems that hold Black people back? What are the systems that we are fighting against when it comes to Black Lives Matter? Because for me, like I said, we're looking for justice and equal opportunities, right? And so for me, some of the systems that we're fighting against is the healthcare, right? Not just healthcare for all, but why is it that Black women are 3 to 4 times likely to die at childbirth than our white counterparts, right? So that's another systematic issue that we're dealing with. It's not just that we think our lives are better. We just don't want to die. We don't want to get shot. We want equal opportunity as all our brothers and sisters.
So just to offer the counter narrative that so many people say, so why don't we just say that all lives matter? Why do we have to say that specifically? Why do we have to say Black Lives Matter?
Because Black, in my opinion, and to answer that question, is that because we are the minority, all right? And so everything else is white, right? For me, everything else, you don't have to put white lives matter or any of that because it is white. You have white institutes. You don't have to say that this is a historical white institute because you already know that the majority is white students. But when it comes to Black, you don't know that it's Black until you say that it's Black. And I think it's important to say what it is when it comes to Black entrepreneurs, Black excellence, because most people, when I go to my rural country area, they don't know of Black excellence. They know 1 or 2 people. They don't know of communities of Black excellence. So it's important to point out the positive in our community, like they do on the news networks, to saying that all the bad that we do. We need to point out the good that they do, because they use Black, right? And the news, they said this Black thug did this, this, and this. And so why can't we use Black in a positive narrative? It's saying that we have Black institutes, we have Black entrepreneurs, we have Black pastors, we have a Black vice president of the United States of America. Why can't we do that if you can do it from the negative perspective, right?
Yeah, and when I think about the term or the slogan Black Lives Matter, and then us being a part of the school of the prophets, right? It's a must that we kind of like look at what defines the prophetic voice. A lot of time when we talk about prophets in the biblical sense, we think about prophecy being us seeing into the future. And when we look at the prophetic Black voice in America, it is usually rooted in something that is going on. So to be prophetic is almost just to be aware. Be aware of what's going on, and then to speak out and be critical of what's going on in that social dynamic. So when we look at Black Lives Matter and that slogan, where did this start? Where did this slogan like take off? And we can go back to 2013 when George Zimmerman is acquitted of murdering Trayvon Martin. And then after that, we go right over to 2014 in August with Michael Brown dying in Ferguson. And I'm from St. Louis, and that area was not too far from my parents' house. And then yet again, we see that system do the same thing. And then we see the same thing. That was in August of 2014. And then when we go to December 2014, we have the murder of Eric Garner. So when we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, it's this outcry of injustice for how police are handling black people. In particular, it was these black men or black, they weren't even black men, right?
No.
And how there was no consequence, and how the argument for justice, is, well, if you would have just complied. But even if you are in a situation to where you are not wrong, and I think that that's why it resonates. Even if I followed the rules, I am still scared of my life, and I am still not expecting justice from this particular system. And then we look at the outcry that happens in the midst of pandemic, in the midst of us being connected to so many things, social media, all of this. Everybody's stuck inside and everybody's watching the same news feed again. And then we see the death of several people. We look at George Floyd, we look at Breonna Taylor, we look at Ahmaud Arbery. These things happen again, and we see this narrative being told again and again in different parts of the country. So when we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, it's trying to speak out against police brutality. And how do we come up with ways to address that? And then how do we deal with the sense that I am buying into a justice system that I don't really feel like justice will be served on my end, or people will care. They will demonize me. And then on a personal level, we look at it and say consistently, when we look at the history of things, we have to explain why our existence matters. Because before there was a Black Lives Matter movement, when we love to quote Dr. Martin Luther King. We look at what they were doing in Memphis when they were fighting for sanitation workers' rights, and they had signs that said, "I am a man." Well, weren't most of them there men? Why do you have to say something like this? Because statistically, there are various systems that aren't treating people fairly, but the same people are buying into it. But we live into this country where we have, well, slavery is over with the 13th Amendment, which ended involuntary servanthood. But if you get locked up, you lose that 13th Amendment right. And then all of a sudden the prison system is booming. So is it because people are really just criminals? Or is it because if you can't pay for the crime, then you're going to have to do the time? Because many people are just sitting in prison because they can't afford bail and they have to wait till their trials. Or we're looking at things like you don't have a Black scholar in the curriculum, or you don't get to see yourself, and that's in the arena of academia. Or even in our churches, we don't get to see images that look like us. And whenever we enter ourselves into the narrative, then there has to be this explanation. And so that's why I believe that this slogan resonates with so many people, because for some, where it's just political, for many it's just saying, is it too hard for you to say that I matter? Because at the end, I can say that you matter. But can you honestly look at me and say that you matter, that I matter, that my children matter? And not just say that, but also support policies that would affirm that same thing.
Wow, that is mind blowing. Thank you for that, brother. And Sarah Kosh Harris says, white fear seems to be greater than Black life. That's why Black lives have to matter. That's a very profound statement, Sarah. And in fact, that actually makes me think of why Black Lives Matter, what it means to me. And for me, it's simply because it calls attention. It's just like if a doctor is trying to inspect where a broken bone or something is, they may apply their hand to see where there's tension or where there's tenderness, because it calls attention to where that area, where that dis-ease is, or where that injury occurred. When we say Black Lives Matter, that calls attention to a lot of where problems are, because what happens is we get resistance that should not be there. Why? Because America has no problem with saying Blue Lives Matter. There's no problem when we say that. There's no problem when we say God bless America. We don't say God bless all lives. We say God bless America. It's that we're not so concerned about all lives or we're not so concerned about redacting the narrative to where it says all lives then. However, when we slip the word black in there, it calls attention to the fact that, oh, now that you're talking about racism. If now one I do believe in the old adage that says that a hit dog will bark. If me saying that my life matters, if that threatens someone's well-being or threatens their sense of mattering, it may be because their mattering is connected to my disenfranchisement. If you feel that you are threatened by by my well-being, that is the very same system that European enslavers had. By my ancestors no longer being enslaved, they no longer could benefit from the usage of their body, their um, the raping of their body. They're putting their body in chains. They got benefit out of the fact that my ancestors were property. Now, whenever they learned how to read and they were treated with dignity, the very few times that they were, and even the times where they demanded to be treated with dignity, that became a threat to an institution that was not interested in their dignity. So if someone says, like, for example, if someone says, hey, happy birthday to me, it's my birthday, we don't cut that person's neck off for saying, well, how shame on you for saying that it's your birthday. You should celebrate everybody's birthday. Shame on you for acknowledging that of your birth instead of acknowledging everyone's birth. That would be ridiculous. However, what we do is when someone who has melanated skin says that their life matters, we have a problem with that because it calls attention to the fact that the American institution thrives off of a system that disenfranchises some other people and privileges others. And I believe that if you really believe that someone's life matters, then them saying that their life matters should not be problematic. It shouldn't be divisive for someone to say, especially because no one is saying that only Black Lives Matter. It's inferred that if you say Black Lives Matter, if you say that your life matters, then what you're also saying is that only you matter, which is an unfair and unjust inference. They're redacting the narrative and making the narrative to be divisive as a means to criminalize, once again, the Black community and place us in this position to where everything that we say is perceived to be a thug, an angry Black woman, a vindictive, angry Black man. And once again, just like how we have this institution where you had the Ku Klux Klan was looked at as heroes to save white women from these guerrillas called Black men. Here comes this system of white oppression or white supremacy to the rescue to save white privilege. So that's why I believe that the narrative Black Lives Matter, it must continue to resound because it only calls attention to where that tender area is.
Absolutely. But so guys, what does it look like when our community, meaning Black, because all of us are Black on this panel right now, what does it look like when our community can't say Black Lives Matter?
When our community can't say Black Lives Matter, I think it goes back to what Sarah said in the comments. We live in a world where it's not just us, and so we have to think about somebody else's comfortability. Because if you're uncomfortable, then it could cause me some type of harm. It can cause me a seat at the table. It can cause me to lose my job. It can cause repercussions for people in my community who don't have the same position as I. And this is not anything new. when slaves were fighting for freedom, and some people said that I want to be free. Don't say that, because we have it good on this plantation. And then when we go to sharecropping, it's the same thing. And then when we have various laws that are passed where people can vote, if you go vote and you buck the system, you can lose your job. And so when we honor those people in Black history, a lot of times they're just textbook stories, and we don't actually look at how these things apply, and they still apply. If you feel afraid or threatened by my body, by my presence, by my voice in a particular room, then that could threaten not just me, but others who you perceive to look or be like me. And so once again, it's this unfair burden of I'm thinking about more than just myself by trying to speak truth to power, because there's going to be some sacrifice to bring a theological perspective in it. If we look at Jesus for who Jesus would have been, a brown man in what is considered now the Middle East, who is speaking truth to power, helping the disenfranchised, bringing people to God, showing them that God is amongst them, even beyond the system that we have in place that we still should honor, but we should call out when it's wrong. And then there's enough bucking the system and people being empowered to say, hold on, we have to do something about this. And he loses his life at the hands of the state. And nobody says a word. There's just a mother crying. How does that change our Easter narrative? Because the stories of Jesus still live on. The teachings live on. But Mary didn't get her son back. And we look at it as we're reading the text and we know how the end of the story goes. But we don't look at, do we take the time to look at these people as people? And because then if we say Jesus was this or Jesus was that, if we actually put it into context, then the gospel becomes real and uncomfortable for us in a way. Because when we say Jesus was from Nazareth, and what good thing can come from that, that's just a rhetoric that we use because we know scripture. But what about when we look at God's salvation, which Jesus means, right? If we look at God's salvation coming from that project over there, and somebody like John the Baptist being this bum who was still speaking truth to power, why are we listening to the have-nots, y'all? How can we do this? And it's something it's difficult because we like to always be included. And when we start labeling things, then others might not feel included. And then it's hard to see, where is my place in the gospel? And am I the villain? Because when Jesus gives his parables, he always told them in a way to where, like when he talked about the Good Samaritan, he talked about it in such a way to those that were listening had to take this narrative of, well, I know who I want to be the good guy, but I only can relate to the other. And that's very difficult for us to do because we like our culture. And we like to be the heroes and we like to shine a spotlight on the highlight reels. But when we look at the harder parts, that's a very difficult thing to do. And then we're left with this overwhelming feeling of what to do now. And not to mention, what about my struggles? I have struggles too. I'm broke too. Or I know somebody who died at the hands of the police too. And where's all that energy? And so there's a whole lot of questions when somebody else is choosing to tell their story. But it's important that we still tell our story.
And I think that also what happens when we talk about Yeshua, Yahweh, salvation, Jesus, and we talk about the name. Yes. When we talk about that that black man from the Middle East, what we often do is we westernize him and we try to make him seem like he was a docile, lowly person who just submitted to authority, when it was very much the contrary. Because how Yeshua died, he died as an enemy of the state. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't die of old age. He didn't die simply by going with the powers that be. He died by speaking his truth. He died when he said, when they asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews? Or are you the king?" They asked him, "Are you the son of God?" And he said, "I am." He didn't say, "Oh, hold on. All gods matter." He said, he spoke his truth. And his truth was so divisive that it was viewed as treason. So the man who was executed at Roman hands because of treason is the one that we call Messiah. And not only that, but he said that he asked for us to take up our cross and follow him. The cross is a symbol of a criminal, a symbol of one who is an enemy of the state, one who spoke truth to power, one who was willing to stand for what was right, regardless of what the system says. So whenever you become a voice, a prophetic voice, sometimes God is going to have you say something that makes you an enemy of the systems of oppression. Because it was Jesus's people that were being oppressed. Those were the people that were being oppressed. And that's who Jesus actually came to represent. It was the disciples and Paul who went out to other people. Primarily, Paul is the one that we accredit as being the one for the Gentiles. But Jesus was not the one who disseminated the truth and made it palatable for all people. So when we think about Jesus, Jesus spoke for his people, the oppressed people. And that's the one who told us to follow his footsteps.
And so when we look at the narrative of Jesus and then this Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter thing, we can look at how Jesus was approached by the woman who he called a dog, right? He let her know she was calling out to Jesus, and he was like, I'm here for my people. Should I throw, the master's bread to the dogs? And she said, even the dog gets the crumbs from the master's table, and then he blesses her for that. So yes, I know I came to do this work, but this work that is within me is not just for me or my people, and you're blessed for that because you check me. Like it's not just about me. And so so as we plan, as we strategize, as we organize, we have to have not just our personal interest, but we have to have a larger interest, and that needs to move forward so that others are empowered to do the same, because we're all created in the image of God. And so we have to ask ourselves this question as faith believers, no matter what faith you're a part of, what is your faith causing you to do? What do you have it for? Because if your idea of faith is just getting into heaven, from the Methodist perspective, this is what John Wesley had to say about it. If we are teaching a gospel that just saves souls to get into heaven, we are doing a disservice, because it's a one-sided gospel. Because the gospel is a Greek word which means good news. Desmond Tutu said the good news for a homeless man is a piece of bread. For a hungry man is a piece of bread. How is my gospel good news to somebody who says I wasn't taught my history in school? And then Black History Month is the only time that I get it. But when we look at Black History Month, it became a national thing in the 70s. So that's something that my parents remember. It hasn't always been around. And so when we have these statements, why does it matter? We are looking at it from a multitude of ways. And the first way is, how does it matter in real time? Everything, even the prophetic voice, is placed in real time and is addressing a real need. But because God is a part of it, God is working in spite of us, and we get to see a larger narrative, because the same thing that they were fighting for before slavery, now humans have this thing with not always being in right relationship with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we continue to have to fight for, because even though the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gave slaves citizenship, and equal protection under the law, and then the 15th Amendment, which gave Black men the right to vote, and then the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, even those amendments were passed in the 1960s, that's what King was fighting for. Our rights aren't being protected. And when you have an outcry, a peaceful protest, the First Amendment, one of the things in the First Amendment says we have the right to express public grievance. And if I am grieving, you're saying that I'm breaking the law. But you're using the law and saying that I need to be a part of it. And then when we talk about the love of God, you're trying to make it seem like that I should just forget it. And so our faith becomes something that is very passive. And that's what some people can't deal with. And so when I think about Jesus saying, turn the other cheek, that is not something passive. That's saying that, in the words of the Negro spiritual, we shall not be moved. Your oppression, your ignorance, your apathy, your inaction will not allow me to move. I'm still here.
Right.
And my children are still here. We are still a body, and we're still together. We are still human beings. And you can try to cut off the nose to spite the face, but we're still here and we matter.
Right. And so what comes to mind when you guys saying all of this is when you can name the leaders of our movements back in the 60s. You can name King, you can name Malcolm X, you can name all these different people. You can go back further, right? But the difference between the civil rights and Black Lives Matter is you can't point out one person. And I think that is the power of Black Lives Matter, that people are mad because they can't point at one person. When they kill King, they shut us down for at least a generation, right? When they kill Malcolm X, they shut us down for at least a generation, right? And then they was able to spill their narrative. But because Black Lives Matter is functioning completely different, a different far as leadership, because we don't have that one overhead person that we have ordained to be our leader, that we realize that there are small leaders within the whole world, because Black Lives Matter isn't just a US thing anymore, it's a global thing, because Black people have been oppressed everywhere. For some reason, when you got black skin, they want you to make it lighter or get rid of it, or you're ashamed, even within family. So oppression is real in every space. And so the difference between Black Lives Matter and the civil rights movement is only the way we are functioning within our organization, period. We're still looking for equal rights. We still asking people to treat us equally. We still asking for to be treated as you would treat your kids or others, right? That's what we are asking people. That's what we're asking for. And then when I went to seminary, I'm like, oh, there is Black people in the Bible. I didn't know, right? I didn't know that we were even in the Bible. I didn't even know women was in the Bible outside of being special in a way of in the bedroom, or you was doing something to take a man down, taking his hair, or I didn't know that if it was Mary did ministry. You know, we didn't look at Mary that way. We didn't look at Ruth as saving her people. No one had preached that for me, right? And so far as how we preach to our people and how we share the message to our people, we still, in my opinion, teach them to be obedient to this word, to this God that is oppressive, not uplifting and liberating. We don't teach that into our people. We want them to stay within a system. And I get it. The system is comfortable. The system is you are protected in a sense in the system. And when you step out of the system, you are no longer protected. But then how protected are you with someone who will hold back food from you? right? And so I think that is the difference between civil rights and Black Lives Matter. What is your thoughts?
So I think that for Black Lives Matter, for me, it's not just about the narrative itself, Black Lives Matter. It's also about the fact that it incites so much visceral emotions. I think the response is why it is another reason why it is so important. Because, like I said, it only acknowledges the fact that people feel threatened when I say that I matter.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that when I say Black Lives Matter, and the fact that that's controversial, that's the fact that that I think that really um, it's unnerving. It turns my stomach to know that just for someone to say that they matter, it creates a divisive um, a divisive circumstance. But with the civil rights, it's a little it's very much different because I mean we're not getting sprayed with water hoses. I haven't gotten dog sick on me. It's a very different context now, because Black Lives Matter. It you especially because of the pandemic, because we're in the middle of a march, and where it's also the president at that time was making wearing a mask a political issue. So Black Lives Matter, it's right in the it came right in the middle um, of the election. So for me, it really kind of lines up a particular person, and a particular community. So one may say that we don't have that one person that represents Black Lives Matter. But the thing for me, when I immediately think of Black Lives Matter, I immediately think of the adversary of that movement, and that was Donald Trump. So we will forever remember how he incited hatred against people who were in support of Black Lives Matter. And he literally turned the country against itself. He played a very critical role in the divisiveness that Black Lives Matter, or that people, when people responded to Black Lives Matter with such hatred, it literally lines right up with the country's leader at that time. So
Right,
to me, it's not just about the term Black Lives Matter. It's also the social context surrounding it. What was
right,
going on during the time? The fact that our very president was very much a part of the um, the division,
mm-hmm.
and saying that people accusing them and having a slander because of their Mexican heritage,
Mm-hmm.
saying that we should build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. Just the lack of empathy for people who are marginalized, and further perpetuating this social context of marginalizing people and looking at people as you're an outsider. And this country was formed by immigrants. And if we be honest, it was formed by heartless, self-centered immigrants, the ones from Europe who came here and took the land from the indigenous and native people who were already here.
Mm-hmm.
So that the fact that how they got the land and how this country became a country was not based upon the love of Christ.
Right,
However, when we start talking about um, marginalized lives, all of a sudden the love of Christ is thrown in to silence that narrative.
right,
Um, and I just find it interesting the other issues that arise when we simply say Black Lives Matter. I think it's not just that phrase. I think people get caught up in just the phrase, and then we're not paying attention to the social context
right.
that surrounds it, all the other issues that get thrown into it, all the whitewashing of Christianity, the westernizing of Christianity, how all of that gets thrown into the bucket. Yeah, so it's a bigger narrative for me.
Yeah.
So we have a comment here. Sarah says the Black community is honestly one of the biggest capital builders for this country, while simultaneously not allowing the community access to capital we build, just having us being consumers. These are the facts. This has been done by dehumanizing our community. To say Black Lives Matter gives us back the humanity and a call to further action. Amen, and I say to that. I completely agree with that, Sarah. Thank you for that comment. You were going to say something, Brother Kyle?
Yeah, like so I think about it in film and how sometimes this is in our face and we never thought about it. Are y'all familiar with the movie Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy?
Mm-hmm.
I love that movie. Like, that's one of my all-time favorite movies. Like, Jangalang, Jangalang. Like, I'm gonna quote all the movies. The Upper Room.
The boom boom room. Come on, the boom boom room.
Right. Like, we laugh at that movie, right?
Yeah.
But as I start to do the work of prison reform and social justice, then I look at that movie, and as I laugh, I say, this is about prison reform. These are people who did not commit a crime, they committed a crime. They were bootleggers.
Right.
But the time that they were to serve was not adequate, and the time they got charged for crimes that they did not commit. And then when it close to the end of the movie, when it comes out that, oh, well, we just needed free labor because the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, right, says that you can still be a slave if you're incarcerated. That's what that movie is about. And I'm laughing at it. You know what I'm saying? But this is somebody's narrative in real life. And that's how we are getting some of your favorite clothing items and some of your favorite mattresses that you sleep on. And do we think about these type of things as we go forth, or are we just doing it to be entertained? And then I think another thing when it comes to Black Lives Matter and the pushback that you get, sometimes to not be racist is the goal, right? But then, so to not be racist is also like, well, if I am not racist and I don't have a problem with you, then really what is the problem? And inaction is just as much of a problem as being racist. Desmond Tutu put it this way: to be neutral in situations of oppression, in situations of the oppressed, you have already choose the side of the oppressor. So that silence while we are trying to figure it out, somebody is still being harmed. Good Methodists, we are called to do no harm. Somebody is being harmed by our inaction to speak. Somebody is being turned away from all of that Christ encompasses by our inaction to speak out and speak truth to power. And so that inaction, if I am just not this thing, then I should be good. And then sometimes it's like, well, what about families, right? Because there are many ways to look at this. Like, when you are a Black person, you are having these conversations when you're brought up. We're taught, like, you got to think about this and watch where you go, and you won't be treated the same, and you have to operate at this level, and don't squander your opportunities. We hear that, we internalize that, so our experience gives us this kind of thing to where we can talk about it on different levels. But what about if I haven't had to think about it, and my idea of equality is the goal, and now I have children, white children, and I might have adopted Black children, and I want them to all feel the same. Am I saying that one of my children matters more than the other? Because I never had to really think about it, so it's just easy to continue on with my culture. And so if I am not from this experience, that's why this dialogue needs to be had, but also realizing that this dialogue happens on so many different levels. Sometimes when you have this conversation, people are lamenting. And there's a whole book in the Bible about it, Lamentations. People are allowed to be upset, cry, and ask why. Sometimes people are like trying to show you how things will work. And sometimes we just don't have the answer. And a lot of times we like things to just be fixed and finished. Well, the amendments were passed. People have rights and access now. So let's just move on to the next thing. But just like we serve a living God and we live a living and we read a living word, we have living issues that grow and evolve around us. And we can't just continue to take the back seat. As believers, we're called to get in the game and not just watch it.
Right, right. And do you think the church has abandoned the mission of doing, do you think the church has abandoned the Black Lives Matter because of the unsureness of it, because of the political atmosphere? Or for me, let's say for me, it depends, right? It depends on the variations. And I know everybody, even back then, didn't agree with King, and they didn't always agree with Malcolm X. And so I think to a degree, the church has abandoned Black Lives Matter, but it's because it has been politicized as something bad and negative. Like Black Lives Matter came on the news again because they tweeted somebody doing something that, to make us look bad, but they don't tweet that they're feeding people. That don't make national news. What always make national news is something bad when it comes to Black. And in y'all opinion, do you think that the religious organization, the faith organization, has pulled back from the Black Lives Matter because of its politicalness?
I do, but I think I would say I would think that the sector of the church that is not people of color, I do think that it has. I think what usually happens is things will be done in the heat of things. Fleeting endeavors will be done in the heat of things to be on the right side of history, to kind of pat ourselves on the back, to prove that we're liberal or progressive. But the actual taking the time to form relationships, to do the actions to establish equity, long term, supporting our institutions, i.e. Gammon. I don't think a lot of those things are done in a long term, in a consistent way. I think what we do is we wait till something tragic happens, then we'll do something to make a grandiose statement, to be the church and to make a stance. But we're not, like, for example, I was serving in an internship at a predominantly white church, and this church in this particular community, it was against their polity for them to support people who are same gender loving in the sense of clergy persons. So a person who was going through an ordination process, who is same-sex loving and going through the ordination process, the church made a bold statement, went against the public narrative, and decided to support this person. Not only that, this church also goes to pride parades, and marches representing that church and their denomination for this person and other people in the church who are also same-sex loving. And the pastor has also said that they would also support marrying same-sex partners, even though it was against that denomination's polity. However, when I was serving at this church, and I'm completely in support of that. That's not the point. I'm completely in support of that. My point is this: when I then offered, well, why don't we have at least maybe once a month or once a semester, where we go into maybe my community, and we form relationships with other black people, people in my community, other black students. Maybe do a carpooling and have them come and worship with us. Maybe we do some type of endeavor like that. And the response was, "Oh no, that's going to be a problem." So what happens is, people who are privileged, when inconvenience shows up, when it's problematic, that's when we get less support. We get less involvement, because it's so much easier. It is easier to support people who are white and disenfranchised than it is to say that Black Lives Matter. I get more support, or more, I hear more voice about people who are white, who are disenfranchised, than black Black lives. And I think that's why that narrative is so important, because we pick and choose which narratives we want to fight for, whose marginalization matters. Not everyone's marginalization matters. To talk about some people's marginalization, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a problem. We're not going to ask the question, how do we do it? How can we make it work? That's not a question we ask. We just say, oh, that's going to be a problem. We stop at the problem. But some people, we're going to figure out how we're going to get to this parade. We don't care who is going to come against us. If 50 people got a carpool and we got to figure it out, we're going to figure it out, because it's worth our time, and it's worth our brain power to commit to how to resolve that problem. But some people's problem, we don't even have time for that. It's too much of a problem to give it our time. And so I think that Black Lives Matter helps us to remember that, that don't just have us in a position to pat yourself on the back. Don't just come to my community to do a march, to pat yourself on the back. It's not my talent or my plaster my name on a picture for your organization that matters. It's my life, my well-being is what matters. And I think that Black Lives Matter reminds us that it is our lives, our culture, that is what matters, not just my body, not just the fact that my body, that you can benefit from my presence or benefit from my talent, but my life matters.
Like one of the things that I think about, like, so I actually think that the church is doing the work. I just don't think that it happens at the rate of where change actually happens. And why do I feel that the church is doing the work? Because when we look at the church and we look at how the church is operated, like us having this conversation, we are the church. Like, we represent Gammon. We're at somebody's churches. We're doing their work, and that can't be dismissed. Like, so it is happening. Like, we can look at a lot of churches who have like the who try to have the conversations, or who even have the signs and are in support of things. But when we look at the church at large, we can also see that there's a larger sector that also struggles with that. And then that's the thing with being a connectional church. You have people who might not understand or agree, but we are still, like, the church is still doing their work, and we are still doing their work. But does it happen at the rate that it should? I would say no. There's always more work to be done, because sometimes it feels like we are like side pieces in the relationship, right? You want me to come over, you gave me this gift, but you just ain't ready to commit to me. And that's what people are asking for. I'm asking you to commit to understanding and being in relationship with me. Does that mean that the problem is fixed? No, it means that we stand in solidarity together. And to stand in solidarity, you have to be able to walk in my shoes, or at least alongside me, while you're also doing the work of charity and gospel. But a lot of times we sector that off, and it's like, well, I'm talking about the gospel and I'm doing advocacy work, but the solidarity never comes because we're not actually building rapport in various relationships, whether that's in our communities, in our academies, in our various churches. And because of that splinter, that's why we say, like, yeah, you know, we aren't connected. Because when we look at the civil rights movement, they didn't have internet. People piece together the story so we can see the leaders in Carolina and in Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi. They probably were saying the same thing. Yes, Martin Luther King is on the back of many church fans, but that wasn't the time. There was a time where, like, you better get that out of here. And so I think that we also have to be reminded and remember, like, have that Sankofa moment, that our unity doesn't always look like everybody walking hand in hand, like off the movie Us, like in a chain link saying we are all one. It's many people having similar plights and still standing up for justice. And when we get connected, we do what Fannie Lou Hamer says and says, nobody's free till we all's free.
I totally agree. And I think that's how we should look. It's not about comparing marginalization. I think it should be about if one person is oppressed, then what is just is that person is that their life matters, and that we develop a system to where all lives truly matter. Because are we just saying all lives matter? Because if someone says that I don't feel like I matter, then the response should be, then what can we do, or what do we need to do better as a country to make sure that all lives matter?
Right, like Jesus leaving the 99.
Huh?
Leaving the 99 for the one. We
Right.
be like, Jesus, hold on. What about the other 99 now?
Right. So we telling the good shepherd in Matthew, was that chapter 10, the parable? We telling the good shepherd that was unjust. Telling the shepherd that he was unjust and leaving the 99 for the one. But I really do believe that God is one who has a heart for the oppressed, for all oppressed people. So if all oppressed people matter, then all oppressed people should matter to all people. And it shouldn't be a matter of silencing their narrative as a means to make all lives matter.
Exactly. Y'all, we are coming to our hour. I believe this has been some heavy lifting, great conversation. I know the title of our talk show is Black Voices Matter, but I think to get to our voices, to understand what Black lives matter and how it correlates. Hopefully in weeks or months to come, we will be able to bring you more Black voices, maybe even some artists, maybe even some authors or some Black living. We love W.E. Du Bois. We love them, but we're hoping to bring those who are still living. We're trying to give them their flowers now, not when they are laying flat, prostrate, ready to be back to dust, right? We want to give them their roses now. And so hopefully if you're listening and you know a Black artist, or if you know someone who has a prophetic voice who will want to come and share a message, inbox us, share, put it in the chat. Call us, email us. Gammon is available. Gammon is ready to hear what people say. And for those who might not know what Gammon is a theological seminary. We are a part of the HBCU. And most time when people think about HBCUs, they think that it's Black exclusive. It is a HBCU, historical Black institute, a historical Black college or university, but all are welcome. It's up to you to take the invitation and walk through the door. And so you are welcome, regardless of your race or creed. You are welcome at Gammon Theological Seminary. I'm gonna let Nicholas close us out.
And so we want to also invite you every Thursday. If you are free every Thursday at 7 p.m., come right here to Gammon, our Facebook page, which is @Gammon 1883. Gammon 1883. Come and join the book club with us. We have a book club every Thursday called the How to Be an Anti-Racist Book Club. So if you are struggling with this conversation, it's a tough conversation and it incites emotion. But if you're struggling with this conversation, if you need more questions, if you have even some points that you just find problematic about the conversation, we invite you to join the book club right here every Thursday at 7 p.m. Bring a friend. You don't have to have read the book, although yes, it is great to read and have some understanding. But even if you're simply curious, we want you to come in on Thursday every Thursday at 7 p.m. And guess what? I now have a co-facilitator for the book club, none other than my brother, Rev Kev. So you get to hear more of his brilliance on Thursdays at 7 p.m. So join us. Like us on Facebook. Go on Instagram. It's at Gammon1883 on Instagram. Follow us on Instagram as well. And we hope that you were blessed by this conversation. It got a little heated. I know it got a little passionate on my end, but we hope that you found something in the conversation, and we want you to join us next time for our next episode for Black Voices Matter. Peace.
Mm-hmm.